In this video, we will be talking about the Yomega Brain. We give it a fly rating because while it's not the best yo-yo for advanced string tricks, it is one of the best yo-yos on the market for what we call the absolute beginner. So let's get right to it. This yo-yo is the Yomega Brain, and this yo-yo is, it's frankly not for everyone. It's a beginner yo-yo, but it's really the yo-yo for what we call the absolute beginner. It's for the person who just can't do anything with a yo-yo but is really interested and really wish that they could. It's got a clutch system in here, and what that does is it makes it so that the yo-yo will come back automatically after it's done sleeping. And if your throw isn't good enough, it won't even sleep at all. It'll just come right back up. And that makes it so much easier for the person who's just always been frustrated with yo-yos and can't figure out why they can't work. The other person this is really good for is for a really young child. Maybe their older brother or sister got into yo-yoing, and every time they try it, they can't do anything. The Yomega Brain is a good yo-yo for them, just to give them something that they can play with until their arm is strong enough, until they're coordinated enough to get it to sleep. At least it'll go down and come back up. It still takes a little bit more skill than a fake yo-yo like a yo-yo ball, which is really no yo-yo at all. It's a real yo-yo. You can do real tricks with it, and that way they won't feel left out. Now, this yo-yo is not for somebody who already has a good sleeper, can already get the yo-yo back up. If you can already do that, you're already beyond this yo-yo, and instead you should look in the starter category on the YoTricks website and look for some other yo-yos that you can use to learn tricks. So even if you feel like a beginner, if you can throw the yo-yo down, get it to come back up, if you can get a sleeper, we'd recommend that you bypass this yo-yo. But if those other two categories fit you or someone you'd like to get a yo-yo for, this yo-yo is perfect for them. But let's take it apart and see why it's so great for those two types of players. The first thing that you'll notice about the Yomega Brain is obviously this clutch system that it has. And what that does is as the yo-yo's spinning, those clutches, they kind of pull apart. And it's got an axle system in there, and what it does is it releases the axle and it allows the yo-yo to sleep. And then as the yo-yo's starting to spin down, those clutches are going to come back in, they're going to grab onto the axle and make the yo-yo come back up. And that's what makes the Brain unique and particularly good for beginners and also not so great for more advanced players. So if we take the yo-yo apart, here is the axle that I was talking about. And you can see that it's got a little rubber O-ring. And the way this yo-yo goes together is that O-ring fits inside of this clutch system, and that's actually the part of the axle that those clutches grab onto. If you are careless and you put the axle system in backwards, then the yo-yo is not going to come back up automatically, and it's going to seem like the yo-yo's broken. So make sure that you put that in properly when you put the yo-yo back together. And really, that's the whole thing. The yo-yo, you know, it's a nice solid design. It feels pretty good. You do have to be wary if you're using this. It is a very hard plastic, but it also is shatterable, so if you give it a couple of good cracks on the ground, that can break it. But that's only if you're, you know, yo-yoing over concrete or a very hard surface. So the only other thing that you really need to be aware of when you use a brain yo-yo like the Yomega Brain is that with most yo-yos, the string is just going to go on at one time, and that's going to be enough. But for the Yomega Brain, you actually need to wrap the string around the axle an additional time, and that's what makes that brain mechanism work. If you only have the string around at one time and those clutches grab that axle, because the string isn't grabbing the axle itself, because it's only wrapped around once, it'll continue to sleep and it won't come back up automatically. So let me show that to you one more time. Like I said, a normal yo-yo, the string is just going to go on at one time, and that'll be enough. For this one, you're just going to have to wrap it one more time. And really, as far as the yo-yo goes, that's all you need to know. After you do that, it'll be easy enough to wind up. And that's how the brain goes together. As we mentioned before, the real key to this yo-yo is that it's got a clutch system that when the yo-yo slows down, it'll come back up all by itself, and that can make it a little bit easier for people who are just getting into yo-yoing. But what other kind of tricks are good for? Well, one thing that's kind of nice about it is that it is the shape of a looping yo-yo. And what this means is that besides just your basic tricks like your picture tricks, which it sleeps long enough to do those. As you can see, walk the dog, things like that, just learning how to sleep and wind the yo-yo back up. It's actually really good for learning the basic looping tricks. Now, because of the clutch system, it's not going to be the type of thing you're going to want to use for two-handing tricks. But if you're in that beginner category and you want to just try out a bunch of different tricks, the brain is not half bad for beginner tricks, picture tricks, and looping tricks. Now, what it's not good for are string tricks. And part of the reason for that is just the clutch mechanism. You're going to be in the middle of a whole bunch of your tricks and the yo-yo is going to come back on you, and that can be really, really frustrating. But the other thing is that it uses a transaxle system. And transaxles are not nearly as smooth on the string as a ball bearing yo-yo. So any type of transaxle, whether it's a Yomega Brain or even a Fireball, they're just not going to be great for learning your string tricks. But again, if you're a beginner, usually you can get maybe 10 to 15 seconds of spin out of this once you have a really good throw, and that's plenty of time for any of your picture tricks, any of your beginner tricks, and like I said, it does your looping tricks pretty well. You can do around the world. For all those reasons, it's a pretty good yo-yo, again, for beginners. For the Yomega Brain, we recommend using blended string, the 50% cotton, 50% polyester. And that's just because it has a nice feel. It's going to last a lot longer than a cotton string. But really, whatever string you have on hand, it's not like you're going to be doing super advanced tricks with the Brain, and so you might not even notice a difference. But if you've got to buy some new string to replace it, that's a pretty good way to go. So that's what we recommend, the blended string, 50% cotton, 50% polyester. And the only other thing that you're going to need to do besides changing the string on this yo-yo to maintain it is, especially if you're going to be doing your looping tricks, is you're going to want to lubricate the axle right here every now and then. And if you've got just a little bit of lube right here on the bolt, that's where this little plastic piece sits, then you're going to find it's a lot more responsive. It'll make it a lot better for looping tricks. We recommend a medium lube, like Super Lube, that we have on the website, and that'll just keep it playing really well. When you lube it, you want to make sure to keep this little O-ring perfectly dry, because if that gets oiled up, then the clutch system, when it tries to grab it, it's not going to be able to grab it very well, so it might not come back up automatically. Now, the only modification that we have for this yo-yo is if you're getting a little bit better, but you are kind of frustrated with the clutch system, you can actually remove this black O-ring right here. And if you remove that O-ring, the yo-yo may end up sleeping about twice as long because it's not going to come back before the spin dies. And it'll basically be just like a Yomega Fireball, which only has this little plastic piece. It doesn't have the clutch system. And that can be kind of nice if you're working on some more advanced tricks with this yo-yo and you're just getting tired of it coming back up automatically. Just remove that black O-ring and then the yo-yo will function. It'll still be perfectly fine, but you'll have to pull it up. It won't come back up automatically. So that is how you maintain, and that's a quick mod recommendation for the Yomega Brain. So to sum up, this is the yo-yo for the absolute beginner. If you have tried yo-yoing and have failed miserably every time, this is the yo-yo for you. Or if you've got a yo-yo for a young child who just seems to be interested in yo-yoing, this is a great way to go. This is not the yo-yo for you if you can already throw a good sleeper, if you can already do some basic tricks. Again, if you're interested in a more high quality yo-yo, we recommend a ball bearing yo-yo. And on Yo Tricks, we've got our starter category. There's a lot of yo-yos in there for all the different categories that are going to be much better for you than this one. But like I said, if you fit in that absolute beginner category, this is just a great way to go, and you really can't top it as far as yo-yos go. So this is the Yomega Brain.